Happy New Year! Welcome to 2026 and welcome to Community Centered. And what would a new year be if we didn't look back on the year previously, back at our goals and go, yeah, I didn't get to that. So that's a little bit of what we're doing today. We're going to see what I accomplished in the past year. We're going to be talking about what I knit, what I read, and then we're going to be taking a look at a time audit and see, did I manage to scratch back some hours from scrolling and streaming to do something else that I love instead. So join me. We're going to get started with the knitting because that's the part I am most excited about and also the thing that I accomplished most of this year. So without further ado, let's jump in. So last Christmas 2024, I knit everyone hats. And I knew for 2025, I wanted to knit them mittens. Actually, originally for 2024, I wanted to knit them both mittens and hats, but I only got the hats done. So after Christmas last year, I started in on a pair of mittens for myself to test out the pattern, and these are those mittens. This is just some yarn that I had hanging around in my stash. It is wool. I actually knit myself 2 pairs of mittens. I'll show you the second pair in a minute. But I love these ones. These are the ones that ended up working for me. They have the simple seam up each side of the hand, and I like the wool. I like the way it feels. I do need to put another piece of yarn through the top of the thumb to close up that hole better. I don't know why, but I just could not tighten it enough before I weaved it in to get that to close up. So I do need to cut off another piece of yarn and do that. These are great. These are wool, like I said. They are very warm and cozy, and they're not too slippery, so it's easy for me to wear while I'm driving. The second pair I knit was with this really pretty acrylic silvery gray brown color. Once again, just something I had in my stash. I really like them. They are very soft. However, they are very slippery, so I don't tend to wear them as much because a lot of times I need to be holding a steering wheel, and I just don't like it as much. Also, I will say the wool is warmer and breathes better, whereas the acrylic, it's colder, but then your palms also start sweating. So just a difference in material makes all the difference. So those are the first 2 things I knit. I knit these second pair of mittens with a different type of decrease that I didn't like as much, which really helped me figure out how I wanted to do the mittens for all of my family for Christmas gifts. I ended up using the same decrease that I used on the blue ones because it just came out smoother and looking nicer. After the couple pair of mittens, I went on just a winter knitting kick for myself. So this is a hat that I knit for myself with a pretty pattern. Yeah, it's oversized. I made it that way on purpose because when you pull it off, it doesn't mess up your hair as much as a tight hat would really frizz it out. It has a really pretty pattern to it in terms of these just kind of delicate, almost flower vining pattern. Really loved it. It was one that I used for my Christmas gifts, and I decided to knit myself a hat in the same pattern. Honestly, I don't wear the hat as much because it's not as warm as the headband I made for myself. Once again, this is the same yarn as the pair of mittens and that hat. So this is a double thick headband, so I knitted it in the round until it was long enough, and then I just stitched it together. So after I knit up all of the different winter wear items for myself, I knit one more thing for myself before I moved on to Christmas gifts, and that is this very pretty, they call it a stole. It's not quite as wide as a shawl, and it's not quite as small as a scarf. So it is just this very pretty petal vining pattern all the way up both edges, and this really simple lace in between. I have loved this. It is so wonderful. It's with this really pretty cream silk yarn. It's been wonderful. I have worn it. I got a wonderful summer dress for church this past year, and I have worn it with that dress several times. It's really pretty light blue and white dress, and just pairing it with this, making it look very nice and fancy. I have loved it. Now, part of the reason I knit this is because I won quite a bit of yarn in a yarn tasting. And if you don't know what a yarn tasting is where a yarn company will come into a yarn store and set up an entire tutorial, like an entire thing going through the different yarns that they offer. And they like to do raffles, they like to do things to get people into the door, so they raffle off free yarn. It's really fun. It's great to learn a little bit more about the yarn and things that you should know for care, what types of yarn are good for what project, get suggestions on what project you can make with a particular yarn. And of course, they're passing around baskets of yarn the whole time, so you get to squish the yarn. And there's nothing knitters like more than squishing the yarn. Sometimes I think we like it more, honestly, than the actual knitting, but you know, that's a different conversation. So I won a ton of yarn in that yarn tasting, and one of them was this silk, fingering weight yarn, and one of them is in very bright orange. And my college roommate liked the yarn, and I said, well, I'll knit you something with it. And this was the pattern we decided. So I was running through the pattern on a project for myself. If you actually look at it, you can see there are some mistakes here where that lace pattern isn't going even. I don't know if it'll show up on camera, but there's this little line here where that is not lining up correctly. So I knit something for myself so I could find all of the mistakes and the best way to knit it, and then I'm going to knit one for her. I haven't gotten to that yet this year, but hopefully in the coming year I can knit that up for her. And then I knit 5 pairs of mittens for my family for Christmas. I knit them all in a matching pattern to the hats I'd given them the year before, which means that I had to figure out how to make that pattern fit on a mitten, which took quite a bit of time. Some of them were easier than others, and that pretty much took up the last 5 to 6 months of the year. So that is what I knit this year. I told my knitting group this year I'm not knitting Christmas presents. We will see if that holds true, because everyone did really love their Christmas present, and I love knitting things for people that they really love. So I might have been convinced to continue knitting for them. We will see. But like I said, I won a lot of yarn. Here, let me show you. This isn't all stuff that I won, but probably about half of these, I won in that yarn tasting. The other half I have purchased over the years, and these are all for socks. Every single one of them is for socks. So I need to knit some socks, and I love knitting socks. So I will be doing that this year. That is one of my goals, is to kind of, get the stash, bust the stash a little bit, because A, I need more socks, and B, it's gonna start overflowing pretty soon. So that is one of my goals. One of kind of the side goals that we'll talk about here in a minute is that I have a new phone. I haven't set it up yet, but I do not plan to put Pinterest or the YouTube app on the new phone, because those are the two things that I spend the most time doing on my phone. And as we all know, when you have something on your phone, it's so accessible that a lot of times you spend more time doing it than you really want to or you really should. So I'm hoping when I set up the new phone, just not downloading those apps will force me to do some other things, and really try to focus on the hobbies that I love rather than sitting there scrolling through Pinterest. But if I don't have Pinterest, that means I don't have access to my Pinterest board. And that's where this comes in. Not knowing that I was doing that, my sister got me for Christmas this 400 stitches book. So I don't have an actual stitch dictionary anywhere, so this is actually very helpful. I am the type of knitter, tell me if you guys relate to this at all. I'm the type of knitter that if I understand the construction of a project, so I understand the construction of a sock, I understand how to cast on, how many stitches I need, how to do the heel and when, and anywhere in between that, I can just basically do what I want. So I don't need a sock pattern telling me how to do a particular lace stitch up the sock. I understand the construction of the sock, and then I can take whatever stitch pattern I want and use it in the sock. that is how I knit. I know not everyone is like that. The first time I was doing that, some people in my knitting club didn't quite I mean, they understood it, but it was very foreign to them. But I'm like that, I guess. I'm a little bit of a renegade. You don't want to see me following a recipe in the kitchen, because I don't follow the recipe. After a while, I'm like, yeah, I see what you're doing. I'm just going to do my own thing now. Anyway, so this book is going to come in super handy because I won't have Pinterest with me in order to look up different stitch patterns, and I can just look in this book. And I really appreciate that. It'll get me away from my phone a little bit, and it will, you know, it's not something that can be erased or forgotten, or I can't get kicked off the platform. This is a book that I own. And also I can just stick a bunch of sticky notes on the ones that I love. And you know what? I need a use for all of my sticky notes. So I'm very excited about that this year. All right. Before I wrap up my knitting, and we go on to reading, which will be a much shorter section, I do want to talk about what I'm knitting now. So let me grab it. So I don't think that this is going to be particularly impressive because it is still very small, but this is what I started knitting after knitting for Christmas, and it is a lace pattern, and it is, I forget what it is called. She calls it a hood. I don't know if any of you watch Kukaba Kika on YouTube, but Kika, this is one of her patterns, and it is a hood rather than a hat. It kind of like goes around and up, and I'm hoping that works out better for me, you know, if I need something lighter but still need something there and it won't mess up my hair. We'll see. So far the headband has been working okay, but I do realize, like, if I wear it for a long period of time and I take it off, my hair is very flat and then flares out past where the headband was. So this is just a nice little diamond knit pattern hood that is, there you go, diamond lace pattern hood from something that was sitting in my yarn stash. I think it's just an acrylic yarn that I got from Hobby Lobby, but it is very, very pretty. So I am looking forward to that. Like I said, another little winter knitting project for some winter wear. All right, moving on to books I've read this year. And this is for books that I have read and completed. I only read and completed 3 books. Now, if you were here last year, my goal was to read 7 books this year. Read and finish. I did not finish 7 books this year. I finished 3. I will remind you that I am in a book club where we have 11 books a year that we are supposed to read, and I only did 3 of them. I did start other ones. Sometimes you get a few paragraphs in and I just realize I'm not going to read this book. I'm not going to enjoy it, and I have too much going on to make myself read a book that I don't like. A couple of the books took 2 or 3 months to get to me because I'm in this book club, and obviously there's 11 books a year. I don't go out and purchase all the books. That's going to be really expensive, and I've been doing this now for more than a decade. I don't have that kind of shelf space. My bookshelves are already overflowing. I don't have that sort of space. So I get the books from the library. A lot of times I get them on the Libby app or Hoopla, and I just try to do it that way because you don't know if you're going to like the book. I don't have the space for it. I don't need to spend the money on it. So of the 11 books this year, I read 3 of them. Read and finished. There were 2 of them that I think I got a good halfway through. But like I said, and then some of them didn't arrive, and a few of them I just was not interested. But the first book that I read and finished is this one. And I'll admit I have this one because in December, this is why we only read 11 books. In December, my book club has a Christmas party where we exchange books, where we bring a wrapped book present and we all go home with a new book. And this was the book that I got last year, and it just so happens that it is the book for book club earlier this year. Was it January or February? But this was one of our books that we were reading, and it is The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. It's a really interesting book. It is historical fiction, But it is based on, the main character is someone who lived and kept a journal. The journal was not particularly detailed, so there was a little bit of detail that the author could kind of go to. And as always, when you read historical fiction that is based on something, they explain kind of where they deviated and where they kept true to the book in the back. I liked this. I was very aware of where it was kind of fictionalized, and you can kind of see where maybe today's culture or way of thinking informed the way that she was writing the character. But I liked it. It is early American. Maine 1789 is the time period it takes place in, and the main character is actually a nurse, a female. I mean, these days, yeah, I guess you kind of recognize her as a female doctor, but obviously didn't go to any sort of medical school. But for the time period, she was the midwife and healer for the area, and goes into a little bit of a crime that has taken place and just her involvement, and a little bit of taking you to a historical place and letting you understand a little bit of how things operated, when once again you can tell that some of it is informed by how we would think today, in terms of maybe how progressive they are, or how progressive her husband was, and how much leeway she had. Some of the things are just very, very easy to see how it was informed in towards that direction. Otherwise, it was very good. I enjoyed it. It was an easy read. It was interesting. My book club really likes to read historical fiction. It's one that we trend towards. So really enjoyed it. I believe the book club enjoyed it as well. It has kind of a fun ending. Like I said, there's obviously some artistic license taken to write the story the way that it was. Oh, I was gonna mention, she also, the main character, her lineage involved, I'm trying to remember, several people who, like several daughters, granddaughters, nieces that went on to do amazing things in the medical field as well. So you're kind of looking at the roots of a lineage that went on for generations and influenced the medical world, and that was pretty cool. So those are kind of the details that I liked. Obviously the book wasn't about that, but it was fun to read about it. So moving on, the second book I read this year was Berry Pickers by Amanda Peters. And Berry Pickers was good. I read it. I clearly finished it. So it was definitely interesting. I have a hard time with the way it ended. Was fine. I didn't have any issue with it. I had a hard time connecting the reason for the two stories in it and connecting the title to the story. So Berry Pickers is about a family in the 1960s, Native American family, that come down to Maine to pick the berries. And one of their children disappears. Very young, one of the children disappears. So from that point forward, you have the story told partially by her growing up and partially by their next youngest child, her brother, and just how their lives went off in a different direction. And it's once again a little bit that historical fiction of telling a story and how the world was through the lens of this family tragedy and these two different reactions to it. And that's really all I can say about the story plotline. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed some of the characters. I just had a hard time wrapping my head around what was the point or the moral of the story, in terms of how it ended and in terms of why she chose the title Berry Pickers, because that was actually a very short part of the book. Other than that, I didn't have any issues with the book. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ending. I enjoyed a lot of the characters. And it was certainly a reasonably easy read, easy to get sucked into. So that was The Berry Pickers. That was the second book I finished this year. the third book I finished this year, I will admit that I finished it last night just so I could add it to this list. I finished it on the last night of December. But the book is called Daughters of Olympus by Hannah Lynn, and it is about Demeter and her daughter Persephone and their storyline, essentially. My book club has, in the past probably 3 or 4 years, read mythology fiction about once a year. And I really like Greek mythology, and they like the ones that enjoy reading it, like it, and then they come to book club and then they pepper me with questions of, what about this? What about this? Can you? And I'll explain several things, which is fun. I have to do a little research now that I've read this book, just so I have maybe a little bit more information to kind of share. But yeah, so it's the story of Demeter and her daughter Persephone. And if you don't know, in Greek mythology, Persephone is kidnapped by Hades and made the queen of the underworld. If you didn't know there was a queen of the underworld, guess what? There is. And Demeter is the goddess in charge of the harvest. So she is the one that, back in ancient Greece, they worshipped for a good harvest, good strong trees in the orchard, good tall and plentiful harvest of wheat and what else they were harvesting at the time. Hopefully it's wheat. I don't actually know, to be perfectly honest with you. I would assume it was. Just about every ancient world had bread, right? So in terms of the story, I liked a lot of it. There were certain things that I didn't think the author did particularly well in terms of developing relationships. So the daughter has a couple of relationships throughout the book, and they never really develop. Speaking of, Demeter actually has a relationship in the book, and he kind of like, it doesn't last very long, let me put it like that. And it feels like the same amount of development that was in that small section was in even the relationships that went on for decades. And that was a little difficult for me because I'm like, I don't understand why relationships weren't more on the page. They felt very thin, not much below the surface there. But I did enjoy it. It's always fun in these mythology fictions to kind of jump in of the storyline of one particular god or goddess and kind of see how they were woven throughout mythology. Because if you know or have read any mythology, a lot of times mythology are really in small little clips. You don't get the storyline of a god and goddess a lot of times. You get Odysseus, and there are multiple god and goddesses that are playing little roles in moving his life around, but not the same in terms of reading a story that follows, the god and goddess's life. And so in order to like put something together like this book or like the other ones we've read, you really have to like piece them together from very different pieces of Greek literature. And it's kind of fun to watch people and how they manage to weave it together and make it make sense. I guess a little bit more about Demeter, because she is the goddess of the harvest and she loved her daughter. The reason that this comes into play is when Persephone is kidnapped, she drops the world into winter. And her and Hades eventually work out a deal where she spends half the year with him and half the year with her. And that is the reason for the change in seasons of spring and summer, where she is with her daughter, and then into the fall and winter when things die off is when her daughter is separated from her every year. So that is the mythology of those three characters, really, that really informs this story. And the story is very much a getting to that point. It's kind of a prequel to that final conclusion. So those were the 3 books that I read and finished this year. And I'm going to talk about one more book because I have it with me. This is How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. We read a book by Matt Haig several years ago in book club. It was The Midnight Library, and we all loved it. So when I found this book at the bookstore last year, I picked it up and I started reading this in May. And I don't know if you can see my bookmark there. That is how far I've gotten. I started reading this in May. I am enjoying it. I'm just really bad at putting aside time to read these days, as you can tell from my goal of reading 7 books this year and only getting through 3. So hopefully that will get better in future. But I do like How to Stop Time, and I like Matt Haig, and the premise that he comes up with and how he writes the characters is very good. So definitely would recommend that. All right, last but not least that we have to talk about today is the time audit. Now, if you came because you saw that I was talking about knitting and you're still here, welcome. Every year I do a time audit for the previous year to see how much I am lowering the amount of time that I'm spending looking at a screen, scrolling, streaming, doing those sort of things, and how much time I am increasing in terms of putting towards my community or time with friends, growing relationships, doing hobbies, learning new things. So I hope that you stay for this part. It is, like I said, a little nerdy, a little number rich, but it is a lot of, a lot of fun. Here at Community Centered, my entire goal is to encourage people to start making those small changes in life that leads to having better relationships and growing their community. So I like to do the time audit as a way to show people that that is something that you can do in your life, and here are really just small changes that you can make along the way. I've been doing this time audit now for a few years, and it's always fun to watch the little wedge of the pie shrink on the scrolling and streaming side, shrink a little bit as others increase. So, without further ado, here is my time audit. So, here is 2025's time audit, which there are several things on this that don't really change all that much. Obviously, I calculate sleep basically the same way every year, about 8 hours a night, sometimes more, sometimes less, but I'm not really keeping absolute track in a time journal. This is just my estimation of how much time I know I spend given any week on any particular activity, and then multiplying it out for a year. So sleep doesn't really change. I added a little bit more to my commute because I just know that I am in the car a little bit more in terms of going to different places and seeing people. So I added a little bit to the commuting, but not much. The work increased a little bit. And because of that, I did not get as much exercise in as I usually do. So exercise actually dropped down a little bit. Now, I really tried to make a goal for myself to hang out with my friends a little bit more, compared to groups like my knitting group or the VFW or church, which are already on a schedule and I get to see people regularly. It's harder to see friends that aren't involved in those things. So I made a goal in the background to see those friends a little bit more, and honestly I thought I was doing really well at it. I thought that me and my one friend had only missed 2 to 3 months, tried to get together once a month. Thought we had only missed 2 to 3 months this year, and we actually missed 5. So I saw her 7 times this year, which is still really good. But I really thought that that number was going to be boosted much more. But either way, I spent a few more hours this year with friends than I had in previous years. And I actually spent a lot more time with my family because my mom and I actually took a trip together to Kentucky to go see the Ark, which was a ton of fun. It was gorgeous. It was massive. It was great to walk through. Really recommend it. And also, it's just great to be able to have a trip and have a reason to go and do something exciting, go and have an adventure in life. So my number in terms of time spent with family really jumped this year. I'm obviously expecting that in the coming year it's going to decrease because I don't have any of those trips planned. My volunteer hours are down a little bit. The organization that I volunteer for, the VFW, has changed their volunteer fundraiser, I guess you'd call it. And it's now on nights that I can't volunteer because I work. So those hours dwindled a little bit in 2025, and they're going to be going down to 0 in 2026. There's not a lot I can do about that, so I'm pretty soon going to be losing that category. Otherwise, I'm glad to see that I am down about 400 hours in the scrolling and streaming section. I'm hoping, like I said, I have a new phone, and when I set it up, I won't be downloading the Pinterest or YouTube app, hoping that lowers my hours even more. And I will be downloading the reading app that I use. Hopefully, that will help me read more books, and maybe I'll be adding a reading category next year just to see how many hours I spent reading and start tallying those. All right, let's just take a quick look. Goals at 2025 summed up in terms of whether I reached them or not. My goal was to read 7 books, and I only finished 3. My goal was to upload to this channel 12 videos. I managed 7 full videos and 3 shorts, which I didn't have on my list of goals to do shorts at all. So I kind of like that. There's kind of a little bonus there, but still I fell a little short on the video front. I got sick twice in the winter, spring, January and March, which basically January through until May is the time that I have most to work on things before farmers markets and canning starts getting started up in the summer. And losing a few weeks to being sick did not help my case at all in terms of getting you guys more videos. My last goal was I wanted to try either Toastmasters or kickboxing, neither of which did I try. Like I said, my exercise certainly went down, and it was just a crazy year all around. I have taken some classes in, let's think of a word that YouTube won't ban, mechanical self-defense. See if you can figure out that one. And those have been some fun ones. I am trying to put together some compilation videos in terms of kind of my journey through it. So hopefully I'll be able to get that together and get that to you guys, just so you can kind of see the different things that I tried there. But those were really my goals for 2025. I don't know if you could say any of them were accomplished, but I'm not necessarily disappointed in what I managed in 2025. In terms of goals for 2026, I need to get back to exercising now that things have kind of stabilized at work and I'm kind of back to a regular schedule. I want to exercise more. I purchased this summer a walking pad because where I live, it is snowy and cold and dark very early in the evening. So walking outside in the winter is not very accessible. I do a lot of walking in the summer when it's nice and sunny and warm. So I bought the walking pad, so hopefully here in the winter months I will walk more. And I definitely incorporated that in the last couple of weeks, but it just was not going to bump that exercise number at all. So hopefully exercising more in the winter here, and then this summer will go a little bit better. I'm hoping to maybe hit 200 hours on my next time audit. If I can hit about 200 hours of exercise in the year, I would be pretty happy. Goal number 2 is I want to actually release 12 full videos on my YouTube channel this year. 12 of them, one a month. It's a reasonable goal. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's a little bit easier now that I've gotten this under my belt a little bit more, learned a little bit more about editing. It's a little quicker for me than it used to be. Hopefully I can do it. We will see. We will see what I manage to do, but my goal is 12 full videos. Reading, I'm just going to reassign myself that read 7 books goal. I'm going to try to read and finish 7 books. It's really not that crazy. I used to do it back in the day. I know I can do it. I just need to actually sit down and do it and get the Pinterest off of my phone. So my last goal is to get that scrolling and streaming number down to about 800 hours. I'm just above 1,000 right now. So if I can knock it down another 200, that'd be great. And, try to focus more on connecting with my friends and growing those relationships. So that's a little look back on 2025 and a look ahead at what we're hoping to achieve in 2026. What are your goals for 2026? Do you have any New Year's resolutions? Please leave them in the comments below and join me here next time for further discussion on how to build your community here and now.